sorry I had to be so.
So I will say, wonderful tribute to Duncan, and for all of us who get to work with him regularly, he is absolutely indomitable. There is no definition of why not. It's all about how to, and how much enthusiasm we all are there around how to. So thank you, Senator. Thank you for being with us this morning.
You bet.
For those of us who get to work with Senator Merkley all the time, we forget it's been since 2009 since you've been in the Senate, and after your distinguished career in Salem, all that you have done, and I was just thinking about how you had been an intern under Senator Hatfield not too many years ago, and now you are on the very influential Appropriations Committee. Thank you for your leadership for Oregon and all you do for all of us.
Yeah. Well, you know, it has been a very long time, actually, some 46 years since I was an intern for Senator Hatfield. But I learned a tremendous amount there. And one of the things I learned is Oregon needs to have somebody on the Appropriations Committee because, quite frankly, after he retired, we didn't have anybody in the House or the Senate on this critical spending committee to advocate for Oregon's priorities. So when I ran for the Senate, it was very unlikely, very, very unlikely that I would win. And so I struck a deal. If a miracle happened and I won the race, that I would be in the first of my class appointed appropriations to represent Oregon. So yeah, that worked out.
Well, thank you, because it means so much to all of us here in the state, and we know how influential a position like that is. Also, your leadership on climate change has been extraordinary. You have also leaned into many of the manufacturers around clean tech and other advanced manufacturing in our state and in our region. But I also want to thank you very much for your leadership in the Senate with regards to human rights, both in this country as well as abroad. You really have been exceptional, Senator, and an example to all of us. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So, Senator, why is manufacturing so important to you, and what do you hope that we take back this morning?
Well, I tell you, you think about any significant economy in America, and if you don't have manufacturing as a mainstay of it, you don't have a middle class. You don't have a vibrant, growing economy in that city. And so one of the things I undertook to do after I was elected, and I've continued it through these 14 years now, is to just keep visiting manufacturing facilities all over Oregon, from semiconductors to semi-trucks, from every major shoe manufacturer to every emerging operation with mass timber, to things like Leopold scopes that a lot of people don't even know it's done right here in Oregon. And what I've really learned from that is how much key components come together to support the manufacturing economy. You've got to have affordable housing if you're going to be able to build a team. You have to have workers who can pass a drug test and bring essential skills. So we need to have in our high schools the sort of training in using your hands, making things. You know, I'm the son of a mechanic. I grew up making things in the garage. That's kind of been replaced by video games in the basement. So if we're going to have people who have the love of making things and the skills to do so, we've got to have that sort of training in our high schools, in our community colleges, in our apprenticeship programs. And certainly as we think about these components, I keep hearing from everyone about the shortage of workers. We've got to have childcare to enable people to be able to come back into the workforce and take a lot of critical positions in the manufacturing economy. So Congress has been a big partner in this. The American Rescue Plan had significant programs, a couple that Oregon benefited from. One is now that we've won the competition for the Mass Timber Coalition project, Portland Mass Timber, to build affordable housing and do it with mass timber in a project led by the Port of Portland. And so congratulations to the Port of Portland, because that is an awesome combination of manufacturing. And another is a program to support small business across the state that will include supporting 2 venture capital programs that will really be focused on small businesses in lower income communities. And so that's very cool. The CHIPS Act, Senator Wyden has already spoken to, but let's get the omnibus passed that will actually fund the programs that were authorized in the CHIPS Act and see the full fruition of that vision as it will come to bear on our state. And then I'll close on manufacturing by noting that you have a couple trends here. What has happened with Russia and Ukraine, and Russia cutting off the fossil gas to Europe, has made us very aware of critical components that we need, including in the chip world, here in America as a national security vision. Also, the supply chains having been so clogged up, really driving inflation, really affecting manufacturing, big problem. So having more of those supply chain critical components made here. And I also want to add, though, in terms of shipping things from overseas, I have now spoken with the Secretary of Transportation 6 times over getting the mega grant to help build the Coos Bay deep draft terminal port. We saved the railroad from Coos Bay to Eugene. We have the only really unutilized deep draft port in the country. If we can create a container port there, it would increase the supply of containers by 10% and really be a big factor driving a successful economy on the coast, which is desperately needed.
Absolutely, and certainly a number of exporters who would be grateful for a port like that and the advancements, so thank you. As you think about clean tech or sort of climate tech, you've been a major advocate. Your knowledge is very deep. There's companies like ourselves at Portland General who have aggressive carbon reduction goals, but our customers and the communities in Oregon have even more aggressive goals. Talk about a little bit about the legislation that you see really addressing climate tech.
You bet, and Maria, the first thing I'll say is the kind of the mantra in my mind for this is electrify everything with renewable energy. We want clean electrons going onto the grid and then do everything conceivable with electrons coming off the grid. We see the impacts in Oregon, so everyone's so familiar. If you live in this state and you haven't worried about the forest fires and the smoke from those forest fires or the declining snowpack in the Cascades or the change in the ecosystem off the coast from the acidification of the Pacific or the smaller, warmer streams that are not good for our trout, not good for our salmon, well, then I encourage you to do so because this is really the biggest challenge humanity has faced is basically saving our planet from the steadily growing heat that affects us in so many ways. And so let's electrify everything with renewable energy, and PGE is right at the heart of that. And it's pretty exciting to realize how far come in the last 2 decades. PGE now 50% of its electricity is renewable energy, which is an incredible accomplishment. By the end of the decade, fully anticipate getting to 80%, and by 2040 to 100% on the grid. So a big thanks to Portland General Electric showing us how it's done. And the legislation, the biggest legislation that has impacted this is the Inflation Reduction Act. And it's quite a long list of programs, so I'll just mention a couple of them. One is that $10 billion investment through tax credits in clean tech manufacturing. So bring that manufacturing here, make turbines here, make solar panels here, make cars here, so on and so forth. Another is really an emphasis on heat pumps. And heat pumps have started to get a lot more attention as a cost-effective way to replace fossil gas or fossil fuels generally for heating buildings. I've put in 3 of them now, and I wanted to see if they really worked. And the answer is yes. Rebuilding our auto plants, so there's investments in that. Really emphasizing U.S.-made solar panels. So The biggest factor, though, is this investment tax credit, production tax credit, that will be in place. We now have a horizon of 10 years in which it will be in place. So it was every 2 years, it was like, oh, how long is it going to last? It's diminishing, it's declining, can you invest? So now we're in a position, we have a decade where we have a foundation for really driving solar, wind, and other renewable technologies. And it's set up so it will pay good paying wages, Davis-Bacon type wages. Really important. Our fossil workers who have been really had good paying jobs in the fossil world, we need to have good paying jobs in the renewable energy world. And so that's in those tax credits, as well as apprenticeship programs to train the workers to be able to drive a rapid expansion. So it's a beautiful, beautiful investment. And Ron Wyden, as head of finance, he was just in the middle of every piece of that. And so as the country makes this biggest pivot yet, or biggest stride yet to renewable energy, Ron Wyden gets a lot of the credit.
So we talked about the Appropriations Committee and how influential it is across the Senate. What are your plans and what do you expect to see?
Well, two things to emphasize. One is I'm really a champion for community-initiated projects. You may have heard of that word in the past, earmarks. Let's call them what they really are. Projects initiated by the community. My team goes out and solicits ideas from around the state. Those are submitted, and then we champion them. And in the fiscal year 22 bill, we were able to get, and I say we, Senator Wyden pitching in and some additional work on the House side, but it helps to have a front row seat on the Appropriations Committee. We got 149 projects funded around Oregon in every conceivable category. And we've got well over 100 lined up for fiscal year 23, but we have to pass the omnibus. I got a message this morning saying that the negotiations over the weekend were going pretty well. We really don't want a continuing resolution for a year ahead. We want the omnibus that will proceed to put all of these projects in place. And my team will continue to work throughout the state with all of you on what this means. A ton of these projects, and I see I'm running out of time, so a ton of these projects are actually about different incubator projects around the state. So that is, yes, they're on housing, yes, they're on renewable energy, yes, but also just supporting the incubation of new businesses here in our state. But if you think about all the things that we care about in Oregon, almost every one of them is in this approps bill, and it gives me a chance to fight for them. Mass timber, dredging the coastal ports, raising by almost a factor of 10 the investment in forest management and forest fighting. Ag research. If you're worried about sudden oak death or the spotted wing Drosophila or any another, how do we replace cheatgrass with bunchgrass for grazing in eastern Oregon, or how do we proceed to have better wheat varietals? All of that is in the appropriations bill. Affordable housing is in there. Health research that OHSU helps lead is in there. Broadband, a big expansion of broadband. We need to have high-speed internet in every town and village in America, and certainly in every town and village in Oregon. And it's a place I can help make that happen. It's on appropriations.
Senator, thank you. It's been wonderful spending time with you this morning. We're grateful for all that you're doing in so many different ways across Oregon, impacting every single one of us, the businesses that we work in, and your leadership, particularly on climate, is having a true impact. Thank you very, very much. We look forward to spending more time with you in future summits, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you all.
Thank you.